If there is one game I have been waiting for to see the whole of Gamescom, well, it is Space Marine 2. You see, the first Space Marine was one of my favourite titles back in the day. Releasing in 2011, it followed the path of Titus, and I have played hours and hours of that game even now, and I could not wait for a remake. And we finally got our first bit of gameplay. And look at this! How cool does this look? It actually reminds me back to the days of Halo 3 and Halo Reach as well. Having these big battles where you're going in as a Spartan or an ODST drop shooter in some cases to assist the defenses, and that's what we're doing with the Cadians here. Now, in terms of Warhammer 40k, I am a big fan. I've been playing the tabletop since I was about 8 years old, so it has been a long time coming that we got a good Warhammer 40k game, because I don't know about you, but all the Warhammer 40k titles these days seem to be time-based shooters. Or at least turn-based shooters, sorry, should I say. But this bit of gameplay we actually saw a little bit of time ago, fighting these Tyranids, and yes, you can see that it does have some co-op features as far as I'm aware. At least that's what seems to be advertised in almost, not necessarily Left 4 Dead, but more of a World War Z style, actually, if anyone played that game. But Jesus Christ, this game looks gorgeous. Whether it's just from the blood splatters on the armor that you'll see over the course of this bits of gameplay start to build up over time, and you'll start to see that they get more and more dirty, not just with mud, but the blood of the enemies that they're attacking. I really do love the size difference as well, from the Cadians to us as the Space Marines themselves. Got some drop ships there with some heavy bolt pistols in them, just in case we need to pick them up and get a bit more firepower. Some frag grenades, of course. What more could we want? And healing injectors. The maps do seem fairly linear. It does beg the question how open it's going to be, and I am aware that this type of game is never going to be an open world, and I don't think it needs to be. However, it does seem that the maps are very much a linear-based storytelling approach, where you go from one place to the next, where there are certain enemies, they start to get harder and harder as we go along, and different types of missions that we can do. Objectives that have to be captured, or defenses that have to be done. AI will help you, and I just really hope that the AI actually start to do damage. It looks like they do actually get kills themselves, so you're not having to do everything yourself. But it is the melee damage that I love to see. It was a big part of the first Space Marine that melee fighting was actually one of the main objectives within the game. Upgrading your weaponry as you go in with chainswords, so on and so forth. It looks like we just have a knife at the moment, but we also have our heavy bolt guns and our bolt pistols when we need to use them. It'd be really nice to see some extra things that we never really got within the first Space Marine, whether that is Terminator power fists, or even bringing back some classics like the jump packs and sniper rifles. And I'm sure, whilst we haven't seen that in most of the Gamescom gameplay, that will be released at some point. God, those Tyranids look deadly. I absolutely adore the design. One thing that is really interesting is this is actually using the same engine or the same technology that was used for the hordes and the swarms within the game of World War Z. Remember that, when the zombies would pile up and climb on top of each other to get onto certain parts of the map? Well, that's what the Tyranids can do, and we saw that a little bit earlier before, well, they got napalmed. And that will be a part of Space Marine 2, having these huge swarms, bigger than we've ever seen before, using that World War Z technology. And I am very excited to see that in action for myself. So the number that we're hearing so far is up to 1,000 enemies on screen at once, and judging by the gameplay, it seems like that has come to be true as well. Most of it is pretty much straightforward horde game modes, but there is a story that's being told. Whilst it hasn't been revealed, we are still following Mark Strong's Titus. Oh god, it's not Mark Strong anymore, is it? It's the guy from Vikings. Well, he still looks pretty cool anyway. Speaking of melee, though, we have all our additional combos coming back. Parrying, dodges, complex enough to add some variety, but simple enough to learn that you're not spending ages trying to work out every move that you can perform on these dastardly enemies. You can just stab them in the head if you really want to. Speaking of stabbing in the head, glory kills are also a part of this game, or executions. They can replenish your armor bar. The bigger the enemy, the more armor they replenish. The armor works through a motion of taking it down as enemies hit it, and then when it gets to the lowest level, your health will start to take a hit. A little bit like is in Halo Reach, I guess, having almost 2 health bars, but one is called an armor bar anyway. You could do stun attacks with close quarters gunfighting as well. If someone is stunned, you're able to whip out your pistol, shoot them in the head, and get that quick execution. I have seen some people that got their hands on this talking about being able to catch enemies in midair and slamming them into the ground, or watching the Tyranids slowly crunch down on your armor as time goes on and seeing the actual battle-worn scars as the game and the dynamic missions develop. One thing I do think they need to be is somewhat careful of repetitiveness within this title, because the first game managed to get around this, at least in the early missions, by introducing new equipment like the jump packs or sniper rifles, introducing new enemies to attack, and I'm assuming they're going to be doing something very similar here. However, a lot of the reports so far have said that they only got to play against one type of enemy. Whilst there'll probably be more later on, we haven't yet seen that.
Frag grenade!
We can see some of the frag grenades being used and how they're effective as well. Is that a Lehman Russ tank, I think, on the right? One of the Imperial armors. I don't think we can use any armor. Not that we really need to. We are a Space Marine after all, and nothing can stop us. But throwing grenades off into the distance, watching enemies explode, looks incredibly satisfying. You also see us use one of our power-ups there as well. Now, one thing that I think the game is doing very well is creating that atmosphere, even from the downtimes, and really staying authentic to that lore. I love the Cadians kneel down as you walk past. You see, as soon as they register you coming close, they get down on one knee, because, I mean, look at us, we're an Ultramarine. We are pretty much gods to them. There's nothing they can do against us, and we are there to save them. Then we start to head into different areas of the map. In this case, down under into the tunnels, with blood and body parts everywhere, with hanging chains and of course beautiful lighting, and it starts to become more of an alien type horror title, and I really love how they've done that, moving through the variety of these different levels, and it seems like this is the way they're going to keep it interesting for new players. Overall, I am so excited for Space Marine 2. I think they've done a fantastic job of capturing that initial legacy that Space Marine 1 has kept all these years later, that people still play to this day because they adore that title. Yet they managed to expand upon it, not just graphically and sound design wise, but from the earliest reports, the gameplay feels just, if not more satisfying. There is dynamic blood changes and that gore is still there with awesome execution moves. Whilst very few reports have been told of the story, if I'm going to be honest, I don't play the Space Marine games for the story. I play the Space Marine games so I can hack enemies to pieces. And whilst in the first game we got orcs / greenskins, now we're fighting against the Tyranids, and I just hope there are some more little secret Easter eggs in there, or some more expansions to the lore, because I love it when these games do that. It's been so long getting turn-based strategy games in the Warhammer 40k universe. I just cannot wait for something a little bit different, a little bit more fast-paced. And boy, I'll be there on the front line as Titus as soon as I can, because I cannot wait for Space Marine 2.
Open the gates. Care to see who can slay more Xenos for the Chiron? I thought a piece of that.